Hello, everyone. You're listening to Joppa Radio 96.3 FM. We're simulcasting on Channel 9 on Comcast Newburyport, and also we're live streaming to our YouTube channel, Port Media. So, if you're listening on the radio, you can watch it later on YouTube, or if you tune in on TV and you have to go somewhere, you can watch this later online. Anyways, so today we're joined for, I believe, the third time is Tom Rush, who is a acclaimed musician who has been in the music industry for, I think, almost 50 years now, right?
I think it's a little over that, Tyler.
It's a little over that.
A little over that.
A little over 62. Oh, my math's off, right? 62 to...
I start the clock when my first LP came out in 1962, so I think, I'm not good at math, but...
Neither am I, as you can tell. So I think that's close to 59 years. I think that's...
Coming up on 60, yeah.
Yeah, I'm still stuck mentally in the past decade in terms of numbers. My bad. But first, how are you doing? I know you got the coronavirus back in March. You're obviously looking pretty good right now.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I came through all right. I don't recommend it. It was a couple of weeks of feeling really crummy, but I'm all better now and hopefully immune, although I am getting my COVID shots. I had the first one, got the second one coming up in a few weeks.
Okay, so how is the experience of getting the vaccine? Because I've heard people say that it's much more painful.
Highly variable. In my case, the first shot, and I was getting not the Moderna, the
Pfizer?
Pfizer. I got the Pfizer, and my shoulder was sore for about a day, and then 24 hours later, I really started feeling crummy. I ran a little bit of a fever, ached all over, got really fatigued for about 6 hours, and then it cleared up. So it wasn't the end of the world. I'm told that the second shot can have more negative effects than the first one, so I'm blocking out a couple of days around March 4th to potentially feel crummy for a couple of days. But if it saves me from getting COVID again or getting one of the variants, then it's well worth it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I've also heard that, getting your symptoms, mild symptoms, is expected. That's kind of the point.
Yeah, well, some people apparently sail through with nothing at all.
Oh,
That's what
those
and
very fortunate souls.
yeah, as with the virus, the effects are highly variable. So,
Speaking of highly variable, the virus as we're almost a year into it now, since lockdown. I mean, it's been longer than a year since we've known about it, but about a year of lockdown. And as a musician, you make a lot of your living performing shows.
oh, somewhere around 99.9%. Yeah.
Yeah, quite a lot. So it's been obviously tough to adapt. But first, I'd like to ask about, I know you did private outdoor performances in the warmer months before switching over to your now digital weekly platform. But I'd like to talk about the summer performances before we talk about Rockport Sundays, if that's okay.
Sure. Well, I decided that since the large indoor things were being shut down right and left, and rightfully so, that small outdoor gatherings might be a good way to do it. So I set up there's actually a page at tomrush.com about how to put on a private concert. And I'm thinking they will hopefully resume when the weather in New England clears up, in the spring and the summer. I do have a few bookings, in actual indoor regular bookings. I'm playing a club in Alexandria, a 500-seat club with only 200 tickets allowed.
Oh, when is this?
It's a place called the Birchmere.
Birchmere. And is that scheduled for?
It's the mid-March somewhere.
Really?
That is my one gig in March.
Interesting.
And because it's, less than half the capacity, it'll be less than half the paycheck, but it'll be getting on stage again, and I miss playing for people. So
will that be your first show in a year?
Quite well, no. There's been one here and one there. a couple of big outdoor shows last fall, and one indoors in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, again with a very reduced capacity and distancing and everything. So there've been one or two, but I think I'll remember how to do it. We'll find out.
I mean, with 59 years of experience, we'd hope so.
Motor memory, yeah.
So my last question about the outdoor ones is, with the idea of doing these private shows, I'm wondering what the clientele is, or I guess the question I'm really looking to ask is, are there any memorable moments for some of these private shows that come to mind?
Oh, every one of them is memorable because I'm doing them for people who, for one reason or another, feel a connection, and maybe it's to a specific song, or maybe it's to just my music in general. But there's a really personal connection with these small gatherings.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever's putting it on will invite some of their friends, and some of them may not know me at all. So I got to work a little harder on those people, but they've been a lot of fun.
Kind of transitioning there would be, are you seeing that some of those people who booked you for the private performances are also hopping on for Rockport Sundays, which I guess we should also talk about what Rockport Sundays is, if you want to give a quick explanation.
Rockport Sundays, once the weather shut down the outdoor shows altogether, I started doing a weekly series on a platform called Patreon, which allows you to be a patron of the arts for a lot less money than if you were supporting Da Vinci or one of those people back in the day. And it's basically what I've been doing. Everybody has a different way of approaching it, but I'm doing one song or perhaps a story every Sunday. They get posted at midnight on Saturday, that's East Coast time. Of course, that's, still Saturday evening on the West Coast, and it's like 4:30 in the afternoon in Australia.
Yeah, it's a different day, but that's their problem.
Let them worry about that. Anyway, they get posted at 8 o'clock, and it's just one song. It's a little tidbit or a story. I just told the one about Clint Eastwood and the hashish brownie. There's one coming up about skinny dipping with Janis Joplin. I've been doing this a while, and there's some weird stuff has happened, and I'm happy to talk about it. I'm also writing a book, and so you'll occasionally get some pages from the book, but it's a little bite-sized morsel on Sundays, and then they stay up for 8 weeks. There's like an 8-week library of what's happened, what's been posted for the past 8 weeks. At the end of 8 weeks, the oldest one gets taken down to make room for the newest one. But you have access to all that, and it's $10 a month for that level. And then there's other levels or tiers, as Patreon calls them, for people who want something more.
So with that more, could they request a private digital concert, or could they request maybe a telling of a story that you've mentioned in passing?
Well, there's the tiers go up. There's a $25 tier where you also get pages. One of the books I'm working on is a book of lyrics of songs that I've written with stories to go along with why I wrote this song and what was going on in my life at that time. So every couple of weeks you'll get some of that. The top tiers, there is $1,000 a month tier.
Oh, wow.
And it's limited to 4, and I've already got 2 people signed up.
Oh, wow. But it's limited, so only 4 people can be top tier. Is that by your design or by the website?
That's by my design, because it requires more more time and work for me. And one of the things you get at the top tier is you get a private concert at the end of 6 months. You get a private concert when weather and COVID allows. But and then the $500 tier, you have to be a member for a year to get that private concert. But then there's other perks as well, including Zoom meetings and FaceTime chats on a regular basis, and little sculptures. I've been making little stone sculptures.
Oh,
My boy tells me that I can show you one. I'd have to leave the camera for a minute, but
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see one. We can do it now. We can do it later. Whatever is convenient for you.
grab it. I'll grab it now. We're talking about it now.
Yeah, let's see it.
Oh, and I'll turn the lights on too.
So to anyone just tuning in, we are talking with Tom Rush, a longtime musician, as he's pointed out, not 50 years in the business, almost 60. I'm bad at math. And this is Joppa Radio, 96.3 FM. You're also watching this on Comcast Channel 9 in Newburyport, or you might be watching it on our YouTube channel, Port Media. They'll be later for on demand as well. And Tom is about to show us his stone sculptures.
Well, I've just got one here, but it's a piece of stone that would fall over if it wasn't counterbalanced by this other piece here. And these are pieces that I would like to blow up and make, 12 feet tall, 20 feet tall. And my boy, who is actually an artist, says, well, then these are actually maquettes.
Maquette.
It's, I guess, a French word for a model for a sculpture. Anyway.
Oh.
So the top tier guys get some sculptures.
Now with the sculpture there, is it a piece of wire or what's keeping?
It's brass rod is
Okay.
what I'm using here. If scaled up, it would have to be something stronger than brass. I'll burn that bridge when I get to it.
It's a later problem. Are they at all, I love little sculptures. Are they at all a little influenced by the stone stacking you see people do at the beach where you have to worry about the counterbalances?
Not really. No, this is different. And they're not all counterbalanced like that. Some of them are simpler. But I'm thinking they could be cool if they were much bigger. And so I'm waiting for a patron to appear to
support it.
Make that possible.
I have a lot of questions. I'm going to just jump around based on what you said because you mentioned, your book, and I know last time we spoke, you had 3 books in the works. But before I forget, because I'm familiar with Patreon, but I've never actually used it. So, what is the percentage that Patreon will take from any of your? Say, if someone wants to become a patron and they do the $10 a month, what do you see? What do they take?
They take 8%. They have different levels of involvement. There's a level where they do a lot of hand holding, supposedly, and take 12%. The level that I'm at, they take 8%, which I think is worth it for the mechanism that they provide. I should mention that tomrush.com is where to go to check this out. There's a free sample episode there and a link to the Patreon page where you can sign up if you so choose.
And then you did mention how there's, you can have 8 on the website, whether that's a video of a new song, because I know you're working on another album, or if it's a story like you mentioned, the Clint Eastwood one and the Hashish Brownie. What happens to the ones when they're swapped out? Do they go into the ether, or do you have them, can someone pay to see old ones? Is that a feature?
Not at this point. They will go into an archive that I'm sure will someday see the light of day again. But I don't have a plan for that.
Okay, they're not. You have a copy somewhere.
Oh yeah, there will be copies. I'm very fortunate in that a guy named Mark Steele has appeared and is doing the video work. He did video production at GBH for 40 years.
Oh, wow.
He has a lot of, high-end gear and a lot of expertise. And I'm very happy about that because the first couple of episodes I was trying to do on my own with Matt Nakoa, my accompanist, who was playing on some of these songs. And it was rough. Video production is not my strong suit. So Mark Steele is a gift from God.
It's always nice to have a good videographer and editor.
Oh, yeah.
Crucial. I might be biased in that regard, though. But regardless, though, so you were talking about one of your books, the one that you said you were about lyrics and what you're thinking at the time. When we spoke last, you were talking about 3. One was an autobiography. Is that kind of the autobiography, or is that kind of morphed?
Well, it's the lyric book has actually got a good deal of autobiographical content because it does there'll be a couple of pages sometimes about what was going on and why I wrote this song, and then the lyrics to the song. It's actually evolving into a more of an autobiographical effort than I'd intended. I thought, well, I'll just put out the lyrics with maybe a little note at the top. But it's getting more elaborate than that. The full bore biography is kind of on hold at the moment because that's a huge project. But the other book that I'm having fun with is called Roadmap. The subtitle being Why You Probably Don't Want to Be a Touring Musician. And it's, all kinds of stuff about what goes on backstage and what goes on stage. What's the difference between a manager and an agent, how to do a sound check, how to conduct an interview, making sure that you mention TomRush.com even if you're not asked to, for instance, just pulling that out of thin air.
We'll keep talking about Rockport Sundays, don't worry. But I'm just curious, because I know you also mentioned you had I went through previous interviews that you'd done, and the one you did with our other host, Drew Mulholland, as well as the one we did before. But I was reminded that you also were working on a novel that you mentioned would most likely not see the light of day. But I was just curious, how is that coming along? I think you were about 20 chapters in at that point.
Yeah, that hasn't moved an inch since we last talked. I've been so consumed with a bunch of other stuff. The Rockport Sundays show, I called it Rockport Sundays because I wrote an instrumental years and years ago called Rockport Sunday, and people seemed to like it a lot. So I was living in Rockport and decided that would be a good theme, do it on Sunday morning and call it Rockport Sundays. I've just actually moved up to southern Maine, and we will still be calling it Rockport Sundays, and it will still be in my kitchen. I am a man of many kitchens. And
traveling kitchens.
Yeah.
So at Rockport Sundays then, so do you find that you get a lot of people tuning in immediately as you're live, or do you find people like to tune in throughout the week and watch it on their own time?
It's funny. I get a lot of responses, and they're just wonderful. It's different from live applause from a live audience, but it's gratifying. People are enjoying it so much. But I do get people in the Midwest and the West Coast who say this is a great way to close out Saturday night because they get to see it, at 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, yes, they do.
Yes, they do. And then other people, watch it first thing on Sunday morning whenever they're having their coffee, and then, all day long and all week long, I'll be getting feedback and comments. I get an email every time somebody comments. And I actually managed to respond to some. I can't do all of them because there's just too many. But
well, it's good then. Yeah. It's good that there's so many. Yeah. So do you ever take, I guess not requests, but kind of suggestions if a bunch of people are saying, hey, you've kind of mentioned or hinted at this song that you're working on, or you've mentioned the story a couple times. Would you do this story next week or?
Well, I can try to do that. The logistics are that we actually record a batch of songs at once. We're not recording. I'm not asking Mark Steele and Matt Nicola to show up every Friday to record something for that Sunday. So when they do show up, we'll do 5 or 10 or 12 songs.
Oh, so you
and stories. So
set it for like 6 weeks.
We have some on the shelf ready to go. And then coming up, for Valentine's Day, I picked a song called When You and I Were Young, Maggie, to run for Valentine's Day, because it is, I think, the loveliest love song I know. And on Easter Sunday, I will have a story that's related to Easter being gored by a bison in Jackson Hole on Easter Sunday.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That'd be a good one.
I got a good story out of it.
Didn't you also, it was your birthday recently, didn't you have a big birthday episode?
One with a 0 at the end. I think I'd prefer to regard it as the 30th anniversary of my 50th birthday.
Sounds like what my grandmother used to say. I think you did a bigger, instead of just one song, did you do a couple stories?
For that Sunday, we put up about a 40-minute program that Mark Steele wanted to do, where he asked me questions and I would talk about whatever the topic was that he'd asked me to talk about. And I did, I think, 5 songs during the course of the 40 minutes and talked about a bunch of different stuff. So it was an extended episode instead of being just the 5, 6, 7, 8 minute morsel that I've been usually putting up on Sundays.
Have you gotten a very loud, boisterous applause for feedback from that one? Like, thank you for the longer performance.
People liked it a lot. I actually opted for a short form because, from what I'm understanding, if you put up like an hour-long show, there are mechanisms that track how long people watch for, and you start losing people after about 15 minutes. And by the time you're up to 55 minutes, you've lost 80%. So I thought I'd keep them bite-sized.
I mean, that is wise. We have the same thing with our YouTube channel. You can see the algorithms and stuff and how it recommends. You can see the watch time. Right. And we usually lose people around the 8 to 12 minute mark. And by the end, I think 96% are gone in our case.
Right.
So
I figured nobody's going to tune out in 5 minutes. So let's keep it short. And people seem to be enjoying it a lot. And sometimes they wish I would do more. But this is I learned this a long time ago. You would like the audience to wish the show was longer, not saying, thank God that's over.
Yeah, leave them wanting more is always a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
Now, kind of turning a little bit. So this has obviously been very important for you to make it through the pandemic and still have a cash flow coming in. But you've also mentioned how artists like yourself and other artists who are able to make it through the pandemic, there's still going to be the issue of where to play because the venues themselves are going to hurt.
I've been urging everybody to support your local performing arts venue every chance you have, every way you can. Because it would be really sad if we can finally get back on the road and there's no place to go. And it's not just the entertainers, the musicians that are out of work. It's the stagehands and the sound men and the people that sell the tickets and the people that clean up the room after the show, and everybody's out of work. So keeping those operations, keep them hanging by a thread, because if that thread breaks, we're going to lose some fabulous places. I did a show at the Wang Center on little TV thing with Noel Stuckey and John Edwards in front of the 3,500 empty seats.
Oh, wow.
And I remember having two reactions. One was it was good to see that many empty seats and know it's not my fault that nobody came. But the other was that, if things got really bad, some rich jerk is going to look at that place and say, this would make a good parking lot. And that would just be heartbreaking.
Yeah, I mean, that's not just even in the entertainment industry, but there was a very short tangent. There was a old parking garage it was in Lower Manhattan, and they used to have a lovely flea market every Sunday or every Saturday. And they demolished it to put up just like a smaller office building.
Yeah.
Little different, but kind of.
That happens. But we lost, during the Depression, we lost a lot of fabulous theaters because they just couldn't survive. And so they got torn down to make room for parking garages or office buildings or supermarkets. And you can't replace those things once they're gone.
No, you can't. There is one, I think, actually in Boston. I always forget the name. It was really big in the 1920s. It's underground. It fell into disrepair because of the Depression, I believe. And it's just been used as a storage closet. But so the idea is always floated of bringing it back. I can't remember the name of it.
I don't know what that is either, but that sounds like just the kind of thing we want to prevent.
Yeah, no, I mean, they usually send a film crew there every couple of years for local news stations, and they talk about the kind of story of it and always talk about bringing it back, but they never do, which is very sad. But I guess looking kind of trying to look on the positive side of this. Many musicians will talk about how they love performing in front of live audiences, but they don't really enjoy the touring aspect or the being on the road. So what are some things that you do miss from being touring, and maybe some things that you don't miss so much? That
Well, I endorse that notion that the travel is the hard part. You know, sometimes a 6 hour drive. If it's 6 hours or less, it's not worth getting on a plane.
Mhm.
So, you know, it happens where you do a show and then you drive 6 hours to the next show and then you drive another 6 hours. Uh, and I start thinking about sending hate mail to my booking agent. She'll say, it's only a couple of inches on the map. Um, but yeah, the travel's the hard part, and that really can wear you down, which is why I don't get on a bus and go out for months on end anymore.
Mhm.
Never did have a bus, but I used to travel. You know, I used to go out for 6 weeks in a row, and now it's maybe 5 days in a row. Um, Back when there were shows to do. The part that I really do miss, though, is playing for an audience, because every audience is different. It's kind of remarkable. I remember playing. I used to play clubs where I would do a 2 week stand in a club, which on the one hand was great because it was just one sound check, one load in, one load out at the end. But the odd thing to me was that every night the audience would be different. It was the same town, the same demographic, the same weather, more or less. Why is every audience, what audiences have a personality, and why is that so different from night to night to night? And I don't have an answer to that.
No, it is. I mean, because I've seen a couple of bands back to back, same town. I mean, you can't explain it, and it is an interesting thing.
There's something about a group dynamic. I mean, if you have a couple of people that laugh loudly, and they used to actually hire people. They were called
Really?
they were called shills. If you were putting on a play, you would hire some people to come in and laugh at the jokes and clap from time to time, and it would get the whole audience going. I would never stoop so low. But if there happen to be a couple of people that are good laughers, they'll get everybody going. And I think it's that kind of group dynamic that is unpredictable. But it also makes it fun to try to play to so many different dynamic groups.
No, there's a. I mean, do you find when you're performing that you're putting on your show? You're not trying to. I mean, you obviously want to please them, but you're there doing your thing. You think the people that have come to see you, they kind of know what to expect, or have you found that even after 59 years of playing, do you sometimes find that you might find an audience that is surprised by the show as oh, I didn't expect this?
It's my answer would be that I have to do a little bit of juggling because people come, of course, to hear the songs that they know.
Mhm.
That's why they're there. They want to hear Driving Wheel. They want to hear No Regrets. They want to hear Urge for Going. Um, and so I feel, and I still love to do those songs, but I've also got a bunch of new songs that they've never heard before. And so I've got to try to mix them in because I'm going to go nuts if I can't do something different. And I'm blessed in that my crowd seems to really like the new songs as much as the old songs. But I will respond to the crowd. If they really seem to like the funny songs, I'll do more funny songs. If they really seem to like the contemplative ones, I'll lean in that direction.
Mhm.
Um, I know what song I'm going to start with. I know what song I'm going to close with. But in between, I'm kind of making it up as I go along.
So very on the fly, very in tune with the energy in the room.
Which
Or
can make it interesting for Matt Nakoa, my accompanist, when he doesn't know what's coming up yet.
well, I mean, it sounds like he knows all the tunes.
Oh, he's a monster. He's a monster talent. Check out Matt Nakoa, NAKOA.com. He's a monster talent. He's got his own career going, and he won't be my accompanist forever, but I'm really enjoying it. while I've
while it
got,
lasts.
yeah.
Yeah, so you also mentioned like with the new songs too. So your last album was Voices, which was 2018, and I remember that was pretty big because that was I think, as you put it yourself, that was the album that had the most of your own self-composed songs.
It's the first one where I wrote all the songs, except for two traditional folk tunes. But other than that, I wrote 10 of the 12 songs, and that has never happened before. I was actually just looking through this Columbia Records put out. They had a sleeve that would go inside the LPs
Mhm.
that they printed up, promoting all the different acts that they were trying to sell you. And the one that was promoting me was talking about how this song that this on this album is Tom's third song that he's ever written. And I think the Voices album represents something like half of my lifetime output, or no, I think it's a third. But now I've got another album's worth that I've written, and so I don't know why, but I'm writing a lot, and I'm enjoying it, and I think I'm writing some of the best stuff I've ever done.
Do you feel that a lot of the songs, because I know in the past you've mentioned that, like a lot of artists say, these songs and these ideas, they kind of come to you and you're trying to catch them before they drift away. Do you feel like they're kind of dealing with the same kind of topics, or maybe the similar sort of, not melodies, but kind of sonic timbre, like qualities to the music, or are they kind of all over the place?
They're all over the place, which I kind of enjoy. I've had trouble listening to an album, for instance, where each song kind of sounds pretty much like the last one.
Mhm.
My problem is the opposite. I get a little schizophrenic sounding. Like, is this just one guy doing all this weirdly different, diverse stuff? But I can't. I don't usually plan to write a song. These things start to occur to me, or a bit of melody will go through my head, and I'll try to grab my phone and record it in the middle of the night sometimes, which means in the morning I've got to try to figure out what I meant by.
I can identify with that actually quite a bit. So with that too, so it sounds like sometimes you might not have a full formed idea, but you'll have maybe a melody here where you kind of match up like, oh, this melody, this came to me, and then I have this bridge here. Maybe what happens if I put them together?
I wrote a song. I keep a scrapbook full of scraps, just two lines that occurred to me, or four lines, or maybe it's a verse.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite songs that I've written was called The Dreamer. And it was written entirely out of scraps in one day. I sat down and opened up my big blue folder and started pawing through it and said, oh, this goes with that. Oh, here's another piece. And this could go down at the end. And um, it was weird. But it was a good song made entirely out of spare parts.
It's interesting how that works out. Something as the creator, you have the whole backstory to it, but when you present it to, the world and the audience, they just see the finished product, and it seems to flow perfectly. And you go, well, this was a scrap I might have had for 3 years, and this is one that came to me yesterday, and then it's backed up by this piece that I've tried to fit into a bunch of different spots.
Well, another thing that's been going on, and this is partly a function of having been doing this for so many years, but I've discovered a couple of songs that I wrote way back when that I'd forgotten all about.
Oh, really?
And in one case, it's a song for my daughter, Sienna. I wrote it when she was a little kid, when she was like 2, and forgot all about it. And then I found the lyrics written out, and I hand wrote them and gave them to her for her 19th birthday. And then for her 20th birthday, I figured I'd set it to music again. I don't know if it's the original music or not. But what I do remember about it is that I decided it was too personal. It was too personal to do in public. People wouldn't get it. They wouldn't respond to it. And now it's probably the favorite song, new song of mine that people are always asking for. So I was wrong about that. And then there's another one I wrote for another of my kids. Forgot all about it, but it's a good song. I'm gonna dust it off and probably reshape it a little bit and put it on the new album.
So when you find these, are they kind of in different stages of not completeness because they sound like they're complete, but some of them kind of like you had a little demo recording, or some, oh, I just have, here's like the chord changes, here's the lyrics, and I kind of remember that.
One of them, the Sienna song, I literally found the lyrics in one of these folders full of bits and pieces. The other one, a fan sent me a note saying, "Did you know that this song you did on TV back sometime during the Harding administration is on YouTube now?" And I went and looked at it and said, "I don't remember that song." But it's pretty good.
Did you have to do a little checking to be like, is that actually my song?
No, it was my song. I'm telling the hosts, I just wrote this. And this is the first time we've performed it in public. And it might have been the last time. I don't know.
Last time for, not forever, but just for, a long stretch of time.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Kind of going off that too. So with Rockport Sundays, like you said, you release a song. It sounds like they're some of the new songs that'll be on the next album. Now, do you consider some of these versions that you're putting out, do you think some of them will be the definitive version, or are they all just kind of a little working phase kind of teaser?
Well, there's a problem there, Tyler, because one thing that I've learned over the eons is that people tend to bond with whatever version they hear first.
Yes.
And so my intention is to, actually possibly put out an album of the kitchen table recordings, just me and the guitar, or possibly me and the guitar and Matt on keyboards. And then go to Nashville, where they've got some of the best players on the planet, and do a studio version. My concern is that people aren't going to like the studio version because they've gotten attached to the simple solo version. And in fact, part of the feedback I've gotten from the Rockport Sundays crowd is that they really like hearing some of the old songs without all the orchestration and the percussion and all the other players. They really like hearing the stripped down naked version of the song instead. And so I gotta ponder that. But
yeah, I mean, it does seem like that is a astute observation there, because I'm thinking now while you're saying that there are many songs that I've heard. So for anyone listening there, sorry about that. We had a power outage at the station, so I had to come home, and we're continuing this right now. Tom has been gracious enough to allow us to do that. So we were talking, I think, about the process of recording new songs and whether the first song that someone hears, the first iteration of it, is going to be the one that they prefer, and how on Rockport Sundays that is what a lot of people are hearing right now, is they're hearing a lot of these first iterations, the kind of stripped back iterations.
Yeah, I'm not at all sure how they're gonna like the Nashville version with a band, very, very good band, but if you get attached to the solo version, we'll have to see.
It's kind of nice that they'll have two versions to choose from. They can bounce back and forth. Maybe they're in the mood for a more lush, full arrangement, or maybe they want a bit more stripped back, a bit more naked, a bit more grounded.
It's
I think
true.
So it's
give them something to argue about.
Yeah, they get to pick and choose, which is great, and they can make their own custom. Like this one is the canon version, and this one is the Nashville of this version is the canon version in my mind, which would be cool. So how many songs have you teased on a Rockport Sunday so far?
The new ones, I actually don't have that list in front of me. I think I've done 3 or 4 out of a dozen. I'd like to, I guess, when putting together an album, I'd like to have more than enough songs because sometimes, you know, there's a song that's just fine, but it just somehow doesn't fit with the rest of them.
Yeah, that's
So I'd like to have about 16 to choose from, pick 12, and put the rest aside for the next time.
that was actually one of my questions is, did you have any songs left over from voices that you really liked, but you couldn't find a home for them there that might make it onto this project?
No, actually, we had just enough for that. We went down to Nashville, and Jim Rooney, my producer, said we were going to record the basic tracks on Monday, Tuesday, and half of Wednesday. And then as we were shutting down, packing up on Tuesday, he said, "Oh no, wait, we only have 11 songs. I thought we had 12." He was all upset about it. I said, "Jim, it's not a law." And he said, "No, but it's customary." And I said, "Okay, Jim, calm down. I've got it covered. We're going to number the album the way Trump numbers the floors on his towers. We'll have songs 1 through 6 and then 8 through 12. Nobody will notice." He wouldn't go for it. So I had to go back to the hotel that night and write a song, which is how "If I Never Get Back to Hackensack, It Will Be All Right With Me" came into being.
Oh, so you wrote it in one night then?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And not just the sort of flutters in, you were pressured to do it.
It was a deadline. Sometimes deadlines work.
That's pretty interesting there. Because usually, the stereotype about creative types is that we don't like deadlines. We don't like being put under pressure to perform. But there you go.
Yeah.
You made the track work.
Sometimes it works. I actually I'll admit, I had the idea for the song ahead of time, but nothing more than a notion.
Mm-hmm. And when you mean, like, do you have a concept of what it would be about, or maybe some of the, like the melody?
I had the line, "If I never get back to Hackensack, it'll be all right with me." It actually came from a gig in Hackensack years ago. Early on, gig that did not go well. It was where I learned that I should not play a bar where I have to ask the owner to turn off the mechanical bull while I'm on stage. Bad idea.
Ooh, hold on. We're good. Oh, a mechanical bull in a bar. You know, that's something that I've only ever seen in movies, but I guess it's a real thing.
It's a real thing. This bar also it was quite a treat. There was a bar fight going on during my first set. These guys rolling around on the floor punching each other, and I called the manager over and said, Can you make them stop? And he said, "No." I said, "Well, call the cops." And he said, "Those are the cops." So I haven't been back to Hackensack since, but it's a fine town. I'm sure it's a fine town, but I had a bad experience there.
When was this, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, it was, I can't give you a year, but it had to be pretty early on in my career, because that was a lesson that I took to heart.
Early lessons stick. Yeah. Oh, my goodness. It's back to Rockport Sundays, though.
That's the kind of story that I might tell on a Rockport Sundays episode.
Yeah, because I know we're good. I know at concerts beforehand, you also had people asking you sometimes to regale them with some of their favorite tales of yours. And you've been doing that, on Rockport Sundays, and we touched on that. Do you have tales that you like to have the tales? Well, two questions. Do you have tales that you enjoy telling more than others? And do you have ones that you pick specifically for Rockport Sundays because you haven't told them?
The Rockport Sundays one are, in fact, mostly ones I haven't told before. But I know in the shows, it kind of blew my mind, but I've started getting requests for the stories. They say, "Will you play Urge for Going and tell the one about the guy from New Hampshire?" And it blows my mind, but the stories have become almost as popular as the songs.
It sound like they've, do they intertwine with like certain songs you have? They're kind of either an interlude or a epilogue to certain songs, or does it?
Well, for instance, a song that people like a lot is my song about Merrimack County in New Hampshire. And so I will preface that song with the story about the guy from New Hampshire. and it's a good story. So I will usually put it in that spot, but there are other stories that are kind of free floating. But the ones so far that I've used on Rockport Sundays are ones that I haven't told on stage yet.
Mm-hmm. Little gems for people to be incentivized to be like, hey, you should check this out. Come check out Rockport Sundays.
Check it out. It's also I'll get yelled at for mentioning this, but it's also easy to unsubscribe if you sign up and decide you're not having a good time. You can get off the bus anytime you want. But TomRush.com is where to go to get a taste of what it's like, and there's a link there to sign up if you want to.
Now, where did you get the idea to set up Rockport Sundays and use Patreon as a platform?
Well, I have some friends who are using Patreon, and I did a fair amount of research about there are competing platforms, but Patreon seemed to have the most features. A lot of the platforms are fundraising for a single thing,
like a GoFundMe kind of thing.
Yeah, GoFundMe. I want to make a new album. And in fact, I have used a couple of those platforms to fund the last album, and also a show at Symphony Hall, where I managed to raise enough money that if nobody bought a single ticket, we wouldn't be hurt, which was great. It was basically pre-selling tickets to the show. But Patreon allows for subscriptions, and they're I don't know if they're unique in that, but it seemed to fit what I was doing. I may well, start my own platform that is specifically tailored to me, but for now, Patreon seems to be holding it together.
Mm-hmm. And so you started also using Patreon, and you had Rockport Sundays going. Did it start in December? Did it start?
It started in late. We've just actually hit the 8-week mark where the oldest songs, or I think 2 of the oldest songs, have been taken down now. Mm-hmm. So we started either end of November or early December.
So yeah, that must have been, that's 10 weeks then if you've taken 2 down.
Yeah. It's about 10 weeks in. And we're getting better and better at it. Mm-hmm. But again, Mr. Mark Steele running the cameras has been a huge, huge help. As it all looks, it's very casual. It's in my kitchen. I haven't done anything in my pajamas yet, but you never know. But Mark Steele makes it look good, and I get to be, very casual and informal and talk about the songs more than I would do on stage. Where this song came from, why I wrote it, or if somebody else wrote it, when I learned it, why I love it, how it relates to things in my life, stuff like that.
You're writing a lot of songs now, which is great. Do you ever? But you said you were doing what was the song? Maggie and I. Yeah.
When you and I were young, Maggie, it's a 100-year-old song, over 100 years.
In that kind of vein, because I know you said before that folk music, in your definition, is a song or music that has no definitive origin. It has no definitive version. You can't nail down the author. You can't nail down the exact. Do you find that? I'm trying to think of a good way to phrase this question. There's trying to tie into I don't know if you've heard about companies like Spotify or maybe SoundCloud to a lesser extent. They've been naming genres that don't exist. Kind of like the big example would be escape room. You'd have a bunch of artists that were escape room artists, but they had never heard of the term themselves. None of their audience had ever heard of the term themselves. No music journalists had ever heard of the term itself, but it was kind of an internal label. I don't know. I'm doing a bad job connecting folk to this, but I was trying to look for your opinion on a company that has such power in the industry dubbing these new titles. It's not unique. I know record companies did that with New Wave infamously. So it's not a unique thing. But
yeah, I don't know. The whole genre thing, I think, is kind of mystifying. When I started listening to music, there was classical, there was jazz, there was opera, and there was pop, and that was it. And now especially with the internet, basically every artist is their own genre. You know, I remember when my first album came out, I went into the Harvard Coop, which was the record store in town. And there was my new album, but it was filed under blues. And I might have told you this story on another occasion, but I got the manager and I said, "Hi, I'm Tom Rush, and you've got me filed under blues. I do some blues, but I also do some folk." And he said, "Okay." And he took the albums and he moved them over to the folk section. And I said, "Well, actually, yes, I do some folk songs, but I also do a little bit of country." And he said, "Okay." And he moved me into the country section. I said, "Wait." He finally got ticked off and he just put me in miscellaneous and told me to get lost. So I learned my lesson. But basically, because I do so many different kinds of things, what category do I belong in? I don't know. Singer-songwriter seems comfortable, but that's also pretty broad. But folk music really did lose its meaning. It came to mean anything with an acoustic guitar for a while. Whereas because of my academic background, I think of folk as being traditional songs that are passed down from generation to generation, usually in an illiterate population. They pass them down from father to son or grandmother to granddaughter because they can't write. They don't write them down because they can't write. And it's it's an interesting process because it's musical Darwinism. The lines that are the most memorable are the ones that survive from generation to generation. And the ones that are less memorable get forgotten and replaced by something that maybe is more memorable. And over generations, these songs are become pretty compelling works.
Yeah, every generation gets to add their little bit. And kind of going off that, do you think that with the advent of, technology, like you and I both have phones and each phone has a microphone in it, you can go and record anything. It's becoming harder and harder to not be able to identify who the original creator of a song is. Do you think that's kind of detrimental to folk music or not at all?
Well, I don't think folk music is hurt by it because those songs have been around for hundreds of years and will, in one form or another, be around for many, many more. Mm-hmm. So I don't think the traditional songs are going to suffer at all. I guess my point is that I think the idea of genres has kind of become meaningless because the artists that are really compelling are the ones that are different, that don't really fit into a mold. When Bob Dylan comes along or when Bruce Springsteen comes along, they're not like the other ones. And so they become kind of their own genre, and then they have imitators that.
Yeah, it does seem like that, especially like with a lot of music I've been listening to is you have someone that will jump off and they'll have a new sound, and you will have a lot of people that do try to copy that sound, and they give them. It does seem like that one artist is the genre, or particularly one song can just be the genre. So I do think that is quite an accurate assessment there. I know
I've never really, since that experience at the Harvard Coop, I've never particularly worried about what genre I am. I do songs that I enjoy doing, and it's your problem to figure out what genre I'm in. Mm-hmm. It's not my job.
I mean, it's not the listener's job either to figure it out. Their job is to enjoy it.
Like it or not.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter what the genre is. I mean, I think it's a fair thing to say that every genre has its great songs, its terrible songs, because there's just that many good songs out there and that many bad songs. But kind of going off the idea of, traditional folk music, this is just a quick question. Have you ever heard of Dust to Digital or Excavated Shellac? One of them is a collection of folk songs, some well-known, some not so well-known, American folk songs. And the other one is a collection of 78 recordings from places that aren't in the Western English-speaking world from the 20s to the 60s, I believe.
I've heard of Dust to Digital, not the other one.
I just heard of it the other day. I'm not super familiar with either. I just thought they were a very interesting concept. The idea of trying to preserve something that is something like folk music that is, traditionally oral, and then something like pointing out, hey, there's this whole aspect of music that people have in the Western English speaking world might not know about.
Right. No, I think it's very valuable. And, John and Alan Lomax went out and recorded a lot of these old blues guys that.
I don't know what's going on. The first one we lost power. This one, not sure. So sorry. We're going to just wrap it up just in case it happens a third time. So again, Rockport Sundays, every Sunday at midnight Eastern Standard Time. As soon as it be
Saturday midnight. So it's available starting at the stroke of 12:01 on Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm. Immediately available.
You can watch any of the episodes anytime you like for 8 weeks. But they're posted on Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm. They rotate out.
TomRush.com is where to find out all about it.
Mm-hmm. And you have those, you'd mentioned some specific big ones coming up too, if you want to just mention them again.
Oh, okay. What were they? Oh, I've got a story about, for Easter Sunday, I've got a story about being gored by a bison on Easter Sunday in Jackson, Wyoming. It's a little bit embarrassing.
It'll be a good one.
My friends just gave me so much crap about it because that's something that's only supposed to happen to people from Japan or France, perhaps. People that live there aren't supposed to get gored by bisons. And I can't remember what the other one was Valentine's Day, which was just posted when you and I were young, Maggie, which is one of my favorite love songs of all time.
And then, so again, it's a subscription model. So if you go to tomrush.com, it'll bring you straight there.
You can, then there's a link to click to get over to Patreon where you can look at all the different levels, tiers. Mm-hmm. But the basic tier is $10 a month, and in my mind is a bargain.
And then, like you said, you have a show in Virginia, I think in March.
Alexandria, Virginia, my one show for the next several months.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping I remember how to do a show.
You'll do it. And then hopefully you get to continue your annual, farewell tour?
My first annual farewell tour. We're now into the second annual farewell tour, but there's not much of a tour. It's got, so far, one gig. And there's others further down the calendar, but they keep getting moved further and further down the calendar because this thing doesn't seem to be letting go anytime soon.
I know it does not. But hopefully we'll be able to see you out in public besides this one show, and besides small private shows. Again, thank you for joining. I hope you have a great weekend, and I hope this week's episode goes off without a hitch.
Thanks so much.
All right. Take care, Tom.
Thank you.